If I enter as fully as I am able into the private world of the neurotic or psychotic individual, isn't there a risk that I might become lost in that world? Most of us are afraid to take that risk. The great majority of us cannot listen. We find ourselves compelled to evaluate. And the evaluation is, I'm going to keep you away. I'm going to pigeonhole you, classify you, make the classification negative, describe you as irrelevant, and push you aside. Because then I don't have to pay attention to you. I don't have to listen. And I can stay in my box of certainty, my little narrow box of certainty. The great majority of us cannot listen. We find ourselves compelled to evaluate because listening is too dangerous. The first requirement is courage, and we do not always have it. Okay, so Carl Rogers. He's a phenomenologist, so he thinks it's your experience that's real. You need to represent that experience. And you need to communicate it to other people. And you have to communicate it within a frame. And the proper frame is, we're trying to make things better here. And, you know, in order to adopt that frame, that's not just a simple statement, right? I mean, you can tell yourself that and try to put yourself in that state of mind. But to do that, you have to really think through your value hierarchy. You have to decide, like, what are you up to? Are you here to make things worse, or are you here to make things better? And, you know, you might say, well, clearly I'm here to make things better. It's like, yeah, sure, no, that's hard. And people are full of resentment and fear and anger, and they've been hurt in all sorts of ways, and they want to take revenge, and like they're just full of contradictory impulses. And so, to weave all those contradictory impulses together and to overcome all those hurts and disappointments and reasons for revenge and resentment, you've got to do all that before you can say, well, I'm, you know, here to make things better. Because if you're still possessed by those sorts of experiences and contradictions, you're going to be motivated to make things worse all the time, just out of revenge and spite. You know, you've been hurt, you're going to hurt. And so, to adopt the framework that Rogers is talking about, it's a difficult enterprise. And partly, it'll come about the more you listen, because the more you listen and you have the chance to exchange information, the more you'll deal with those inner contradictions and that sort of collection of hurts and irritations that are corrupting you and twisting you in the wrong direction. So the Rogerian perspective is extremely useful. It's very useful. The reason I concentrated on that one quote of his today is because that's such a useful thing. You can try it right away. The next time you're talking to someone, maybe you have a friend who wants to talk things over. It's like, listen to them. And then when there's a pause, say, well, it sounds to me like this is what you meant. And they'll go, yes, that's exactly what I meant. Maybe, if you were really listening. They'll be real happy about that because they didn't know what they meant. They're just telling you this story about why they're annoying. And so then you'll think, oh, wow, I got it. And then they'll be happy and they'll tell you something else. And like, they'll walk away from that conversation much lighter. And you will too, even though it's a weird thing, because you might think, well, if you listen, people are going to dump a bunch of trouble on you. It's like, well, yes, but if you're willing to listen despite the fact that there might be a bunch of trouble dumped on you, then you've also told yourself that you're the sort of person that can tolerate having a bunch of trouble dumped on yourself. And that's an extremely positive attitude to take towards yourself. You know, and you're not just saying it, you're acting it out. And so that's a sign of faith in yourself. And you're not well, I said you were stupid, like you are in relationships, but you're not totally stupid. You know, you'll be able to notice that you've been willing to expose yourself to a risk. And when your body and your mind are watching that, they'll think, oh, I'm the sort of thing that can voluntarily expose itself to a risk. Well, that's like the secret to making yourself strong. It's exposure. And so you can do that in every conversation. And that toughens you up, as well as informing you. It's a very powerful technique, so I would recommend try it, see what happens. It's also fun because it's like you're following a thread of the conversation. If you're really listening, the conversation will continue, and it continues in a meaningful way. And then you know that you're in the right place, and it's like a challenge to your capacity to pay attention. And then you get engaged in all conversations You get engaged in them, and then you're in engaging conversations all the time. That's a good thing. So, okay, we'll see you Thursday.